Okay, it's about a little after 1:30 on Monday, August 10th, 2026. And I'm calling to order today's meeting of the Crime Victims Compensation Board. Three of the five board members are present in attendance at this meeting, constituting a quorum. So our first order of business is to review the draft minutes from July 13, 2026. I have read the draft that was submitted to the board. I have no questions, comments, or concerns. Does anybody else?
No.
Alicia, no? Okay, then I would make a motion to approve as drafted the minutes for the July 13, 2026 meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, by a unanimous vote of 3-0, the minutes from July 13, 2026 are approved. So let's move on to the compensation program report. Is Anna presenting this week?
Yep,
this month?
that's me. I'll go ahead and share my screen.
No, it's like a warm serape on a warm day.
Yeah, it's my little poncho thing. The air conditioning is really high in here, and I have short sleeves on, but I'm not complaining because the air conditioner was broken for a little while, so it was unbearably warm. So I'm doing okay.
Well, stay cool.
Yep. Okay, so this should be pretty quick because July is the only month where the year to date and the monthly numbers are the same, but we'll go ahead and review both. So let's see here. So the top spending category for the first month of FY 2027 was domestic assault. We spent a total of $15,541.87. Followed by other vehicular crimes at $8,655.48. This was in relation to a vehicular death. A pedestrian was struck and killed by a vehicle. And third was homicide at $4,721.74. For top spending categories for July, top category was lost wages at $10,955, followed by funeral at $8,100, and then medical facility at $5,678.68. So we made a total of 57 payments on 32 claims. The sexual assault program made 8 payments on 7 claims. And so the total for both programs for the month of July was $48,049.98. And so you will see these same numbers reflected in year to date, but just in the comparison to what we're spending last year. So costs for domestic assault are just a little bit higher. Homicide's actually a bit lower. And other vehicular is significantly lower. We hadn't made any payments last July. Any questions before I move on to claims by county?
No.
All right. Okay, so for the month of July, we received a total of 26 claims. We did not receive any from Addison, Essex, Grand Isle, Lamoille, or Orange. Just received from Chittenden, Bennington, Caledonia, Franklin, Orleans, Rutland, Washington, Windham, and Windsor. So we received 26 in comparison to the 36 we received last year for a 27.77% decrease, which will obviously be the same as the year to date. The sexual assault program received 21 this month as opposed to 14 last year for a 50% increase.
Do you attach any significance to the significant decrease over the first month of last year? Or is it just summer doldrums and it ebbs and flows?
I'm actually not sure. So we don't get crime data from the previous year until the current year. So I could certainly look up why last July was higher, but in terms of this July, I won't know until next July. But sometimes we do see an uptick in crime in the summer just because of the heat. Like there's a correlation, but yeah, I'm not sure what the drop off was there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any questions? All right, thank you very much for your time. I will pass it over to Michelle.
Okay, the restitution unit report.
Yes, let me just share my screen here. So you should be looking at the RU board summary. So for the month of July, the collectors brought in $59,197.72. So that exceeded our monthly goal by $9,197. Um, we also brought in a total of 31,510 in tax money. A good chunk of that tax money was actually from property tax prebate money. So if you own property in the state of Vermont, depending on your income, the state may give you money back to go towards your property taxes that actually goes to the town. So we're able to intercept that money as well. So a good chunk of the money in July was that. So people that we know have property, we're able to confirm that. It also gives us an ability to look at folks who just received an order in the last year and determine if they own property as well. So we're actually able to place two more liens based on monies that we received back through that. There's another big chunk that will come in September as well for that same thing. So any late filers will get that, but that always boosts our July numbers a bit. We were able to advance $35,268 from the fund. That's just about 6,000 more than the same time last year. Although if you look at what we paid out to non-fund payments, so $81,203 last year compared to just a shy of 44,000 this year. So that's pretty significant. And that really is just reflective of what's collected because that money is really just a pass through. So whatever comes in May and June then would be sent out in July. And so that's kind of just what you're seeing is that our May and June last year was just probably higher collection wise than this year. We sent out a total of 185 payments to victims of crime. And then one piece to note, I totally dropped the ball on unclaimed property this year. Usually I reach out to them in January to start the process of seeing what monies we can intercept that offenders have an unclaimed property. This year I was much later, and it was April. So we actually got the unclaimed property money in July this year. So it normally would have been last fiscal year. But this year it actually falls into this fiscal year, but $18,475. So again, that's a pretty good chunk. It's average anywhere from like 8 to 12,000. So definitely a little bit of a boost this year, which is nice to see. Any questions with that?
Yeah, Michelle, this is just a matter of curiosity on my part. I'm surprised and impressed at the relatively large number of dollars recovered from property tax prebate payments. And much of the crime that results in restitution orders is in the nature of retail theft and so forth. And my very strong supposition is that your average shoplifter does not have a house on which he's paying taxes.
Right.
Do you have any idea what a typical profile of a person who has a house and is receiving a prebate tax payment is in the fraud or restitution context?
A good chunk of them are actually Medicaid fraud cases, embezzlement, like that sort of thing, more financial crimes versus like retail theft. Typically, they're not like drug-related crimes where people are owning the property. So more of like the one-time kind of folks that you'll see that aren't like the repeat offenders. But yeah, so it is, and they get good chunks. So oftentimes it's a couple $1,000. At a time that we'll get for somebody. So, so yeah.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense, and thanks for the clarification.
Yeah. Okay. Share my other one real quick. So this you should be seeing the restitution judgment order report. So for July, we got a total of 123 new orders statewide, 34 of those from Chittenden, oh, I can't see all my numbers, sorry. 26 from Franklin, 21 from Washington, and 14 from Rutland. So Chittenden usually is pretty high up there. Franklin County, of the 26 that we received, 15 came from one individual. So again, a retail theft charges, and then another individual had 6. So that really made up a good chunk of what came from Franklin County. Washington County, same thing. Of the 21, 13 of those were for one individual. And again, all retail theft. So again, each month we're sort of seeing the same thing. Like the larger counties with the big box stores are the ones that have the larger number of orders. And that's, again, just a lot of it is just retail theft that we're seeing. And we're also seeing a high correlation with a lot of those charges being dismissed. So per statute, they can order restitution on a dismissed charge as long as there is a plea agreement. So we're definitely seeing that happen more and more frequently, where somebody may have, 20 open dockets and they may dismiss a good chunk of those and only have convictions on a few, but order restitution on all. So in a way to sort of just, streamline the process and get those cases closed. So it definitely makes for an interesting on our end when, they're really not collectible, but our hope is at some point they may be.
Do you know if any or a significant number of these restitution defendants were participants in the governor's accountability docket cases?
That I don't know, but that would be something interesting to track, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I was going to say,
Not for me.
to date, that's primarily been in Chittenden. Rutland has had it for a little bit. It's going to start in Windham County, so that would be interesting to see if you see some spikes in Windham.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, everyone.
Okay. Is
Thank
Carol
you.
up? The financial report?
I am. So hopefully you can see my screen. So this is a start of the new fiscal year. So again, July started our new fiscal year, and I can't believe that we're already in August. Couple of things to note is that number one is that we actually reduced the appropriation, and this should say 27, my apologies, for the start of this fiscal year. You may recall that we reduced it by about 250,000 for the compensation fund to align more to the actual revenues that are coming into the fund. Historically, we've been seeing that obviously there's been a decrease in revenues in that particular fund. So I aligned our budget to be more appropriate to the actual revenues that are coming in. We can see that, again, we're in the first month in the fiscal year. We saw a slight increase in the month of July in the comp fund. We saw a large difference from what they collected last year to the July of this year, and a slight decrease in the DVSE fund. What we are seeing is some positive numbers up at the top. Again, it's early in the fiscal year, but that's always promising to look at that. This too reflects a reduced amount. Last year, this was over 1 million. We reduced it more appropriately to the amount that was their base funding. You may recall in the previous conversations that the DVSE fund did receive some one-time funds, both in 26 and 27. So we'll be monitoring, of course, these funds to see how they're doing. Our fund balances, you may have, I'm not sure, but I think Mel sends you kind of my highlights of each fund to talk a little bit about them. Comp, again, we're holding steady with that. We can see that there wasn't a real significant change between the beginning balance this year and what we started with last year. So I'm feeling pretty good about the compensation fund, that again, we're able to keep that somewhat stable. And especially noting that right now we've been supporting victim compensation payments with these state dollars, this special fund. So we want to be able to do that. We're going to use our budget to use as much state dollars as we can so that then we get the 75% federal reimbursement. So at some point in the next few months, we'll switch back over to federal funds. But right now, for the last few months, we've been using the special funds. So for that balance to stay pretty close is really good. Restitution, I still continue to monitor this. I am concerned that we are seeing the opposite happening with the restitution fund, that the beginning cash balance starting July of 27, fiscal year 27, is about $300,000 less than what we started with last year at this time. So although restitution, you could see in the previous screen that they did bring in more, the overall fund itself is not holding as steady as a compensation fund. So we will continue to monitor that. I also want to say that we do know that there's been a reduction in personnel. They're down one full-time case collector. We have done internally what we can to support this fund. And what I mean by that is in state fiscal year 27, and we did some of this in 26, we're using more general funds to support some operating cost. I've talked about that. So we're trying to reduce the burden on both the compensation and the restitution fund to help, and use general funds to help support IT cost, rent, electricity, some of those general operating costs that have historically been taken out of our compensation and restitution fund. And we're utilizing the general funds to, again, support those basic expenses with general funds. So that's what we're looking at there. The DVSC fund, again, monitoring that. They do have some one-time funds. We actually had a meeting on Friday with the Vermont Network to let them know what their fund balance is. So we do collaborate with them to get a better understanding of what that looks like. Part of the money that was part of this 27 appropriation was about $100,000 to be left in the fund, just to try to stabilize that balance as well. So we will look at that. The last thing I guess I want to talk a little bit about is, again, comp by type. This is what I mean by, again, we're going to be using state dollars versus federal dollars to support that. Again, we have a whole new budget. So in the July, when you look at your board report, it involves all new lines, all new budgets, all new appropriations. So again, it looks a little different than last year's. Any questions that you might have?
Nothing for me.
Okay,
Thank you, Carol.
sure.
Okay, I think Jen's up.
Sorry, I decided to put my air conditioning on before I passed out, so. So I just have a few updates, nothing too extensive. Already the legislative work has started up with study groups and committee meetings, so already planning for next year. Really want to give an incredible shout out to Carol and Sam, who are on the call, and also to Amanda, who's currently our grants manager. She, as you know, resigned as her partner moved. He got another job, but she stayed on temporarily with us. But all the federal grants that were due were submitted on time. Really Herculean effort on everybody's part to do that, and that at the same time that Carol and Sam are doing technical assistance to all of our sub-grantees, filling out federal and state reports, and just really, really impressed with the work of the team. So the center is well-oiled, and as my colleagues say, small but mighty team, but everything's done, and we've already heard back on a couple of our federal grants that were submitted that they were accepted without further question or need for information. So I just wanted to update the board on that. I know that came up at the last meeting. There are no concerns. We've got it under control, and I'm not surprised. And we had pulled the job during all of this. We got a couple of candidates, but neither of which was even close to what we were looking for. So we are going to put that back out there. Hopefully, certainly before the end of August, and look at hopefully getting that position filled. But we're all in agreement, when this happens, it's going to be the right person. And it's unfortunate that people had to take more on, but the work's been real solid, and I'm really proud and impressed to work with people on the grants team. So just thank you, and I thought the board would like to know that.
Well, thank you and congratulations to the board, to the grant people.
The other piece I wanted to just give you a little bit of heads up on, we've mentioned a little bit every now and then that we've been working on the strategic plan as a staff. Ours is woefully outdated. We started to work on it, I don't know, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. But then we hit a snafu with Vermont Buys, the state's new contracting system, and we weren't able to pay our facilitator or any of our other contractors for quite some time. So we've restarted that process up. We've gotten pretty far. We're just in the nitty-gritty right now in terms of identifying activities and such. It should be noted that one of the people that's on this smaller sort of planning operationalization group is Susan Ide. She's on as a survivor and member of our advisory council, but obviously she also brings her lens to board member. And I bring this to your attention in particular because there are some tasks that we have identified that would help strengthen the center's organizational effectiveness and our ability to support the center and also to support you all. And we started looking at kind of our, what we have for a structure to support you, and realizing we don't have some basic things such as conflict of interest policy, such as a board book. We don't have rules for decision-making, even though that's been in our statute since the mid-'80s when we were created. So there are some pieces around that we're going to be working really hard on. And as those roll out, and Susan will be a part of that, if any of the other of you want to take a role, the door's always open, but those will be regular updates from now on as far as what that is going to look like. And then we'll also just want to hear about what would be helpful for board members, whether it be you or new people coming on, like an orientation. We don't have that as a process. We don't have a training process. So these are some pieces that we'll look to you for feedback on, because it's really just become quite apparent that that's not something that we have really, I feel, done our due diligence in as an agency. And if for no other reason, then I feel it exposes us, it exposes the board to liability, to not have rules that we are required to have, or to have other procedures and such. So we haven't gotten, other than identifying some basic tasks, we haven't gone any further than that. But I just wanted to let you know what our conversation was looking like, letting you know that Susan's been a part. And at this point, if any of you are like, no, I would like to be a part of all of that, or just update me, and then I'll make that choice for myself. But it's realizing again that we need to do more as an agency to provide support for all of you who take the time to come to our meeting. So I don't know if there's any questions folks have.
I don't. Thank you for that bit of information.
Sounds like good work so far.
Well, we haven't gotten in the weeds yet. We've only identified there are some weeds we got to deal with, but we haven't figured out what that is.
Well, that's a start.
That's really all I had.
Okay, do any of the board members have any questions, concerns they want to raise? I hear a deafening silence, so I interpret that as a no. It's my understanding there are no claims for the board's consideration. Is that still correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, then I assume there are no members of the public who wish to put in their 2 cents worth.
Correct.
Okay, then I would make a motion to close the August 10, 2026 meeting of the Crime Victims Compensation Board. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye or raise their hands.
Aye.
Okay, the meeting is over. Happy New Year fiscally.